And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. Big news coming late yesterday. Candidate for Congress, former Senator Russ Fulcher, has been endorsed by the Club for Growth. We'll talk to him coming up next hour. With us to give us some analysis on all things political, our great friend David Ripley joining us from Idaho Chooses Life. Good to talk to you, the talented Mr. Ripley. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
Well, you take a look at what's going on. Obviously, we've got the big banquet this weekend, Friday at Eagle Christian Church. Tickets still available. We'll talk a little bit about that, but let's delve right into it. What do you make of this breaking news?
Well, there's no doubt that it's a big boost for Russ's campaign. They've proven on numerous occasions that they can raise money, and in a race like that, money means a lot.
Well, that was short, concise, and again, typical David Ripley. So let's broaden this out a little. Let's take a look at and kind of what we did on Idaho Insights over the weekend. You've got a competitive field. You've got Representative Perry, Representative Malik, David Leroy, Nick Henderson, Michael Snyder, and former Senator Fulcher. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think the endorsement by Club for Growth is going to be a significant development as you look back. Certainly does not mean the race is over. They were very involved in trying to beat Congressman Simpson a couple of years ago, and that didn't pan out very well. But, of course, this is an open seat and a different kind of dynamic. So I think up to this point, the candidates have been fairly, evenly matched, at least Fulcher and Leroy in terms of their fundraising. And I've heard that, Malik is doing pretty well in fundraising. Perry, of course, got a late start on that. So that's going to be challenging, probably, especially for her.
Well, it does come down to this idea of how important money is in this race.
Well, advertising, a lot of it just is a question of people not being very familiar with the candidates in the field, and name ID is worth a lot. I think Russ and Dave Leroy have an advantage in that regard, going into the campaign. And money does matter in politics. There's just no doubt about that.
Sure. Moving on for a moment here, our great friend, I was going to say David Leroy, but David Ripley joining us here. A lot of Davids as we move along here.
Too many Davids, maybe. I don't
know. I'm with you. Dave Petso, Dave Ripley. Let's talk a little bit about this year politically. Is this the biggest year ever in Idaho politics?
I think it's, I call it the mother of all primaries. I don't think in my experience, I don't think we've had a bigger primary, and I think the impact is going to be from, the governor's office all the way down to critical legislative races, and that's going to be across the state, I think.
Let's talk a little bit about the governor's race. How big is this?
Well, you're looking at a generational change, I think, potentially. With some potentially dramatic new leadership in the State House and the consequences. Traditionally, people get reelected. So you're looking at the next decade or longer in terms of setting the tone for Idaho politics and policy direction.
Well, does that mean the state could be going liberal?
Oh, that'd be hard to believe, but I don't really see the Democrats being very viable. I think they've had a hard time recruiting candidates, but there are going to be sharp policy differences between the three candidates for governor, I think, and they bring an immense amount of talent and experience to the race. I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation.
Well, that's saying something without saying anything, really.
Well, it's early.
Well, that's why you're the shrewd political operative.
We have to see how this thing develops. But I think you have very formidable candidates, and
right.
I expect they're going to run great races. I think there's going to be an immense amount of media and direct mail. I think voters are going to hear an awful lot from each one of them.
David Ripley joining us from Idaho Chooses Life on KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's take a look at this. You have Congressman Labrador, you have Lieutenant Governor Little, and you have Tommy Ahlquist, and you have polls coming out that show, I guess, the race tightening. If you believe the poll that was leaked to Idaho Politics Weekly, depending on that, how accurate is polling in Idaho? Has it been your experience, David?
Well, there are some polls that are better than others, and I think polling in general is very tricky with respect to primary contests because everything hinges upon the model that is being used in terms of predicting turnout. So you do have to take it with a grain of salt, and especially this early in the race. I think right now the race has been defined more so by Tommy Ahlquist than any of the other candidates because he's been, doing television and direct mail for some time to try to catch up to the other opponents in terms of his name ID rate and introducing himself to the people of Idaho. So I think it gives you some idea perhaps where the race is at, but I really do anticipate a very competitive race down to the wire, frankly.
Well, let's get back to the Idaho Chooses Life banquet. That'll be this Friday at Eagle Christian Church. If people want tickets, David, what can they do?
The best thing to do now is to just give me a call at 344-8709. We'll find them a place to sit. It's going to be a full room, I think. We're going to have a lot of those candidates there. A great opportunity to meet them and visit with them and ask them questions. And, I think it's going to be a fun evening. We have Ron Crane as our guest speaker. We have Jamie Seaton, who's been to Nashville and recorded several albums. In fact, she's going to be recording, she's offering a new Christmas album for sale at the dinner. And I don't know, I just think it's a great way to launch the Christmas season, a celebration of life and hope.
Well, plus you have a silent auction. I'm sure our friends from Corporate Auctions will be there. Great deals in addition to that. And really it sends the message of hope and unity and family. It is one of my top two favorite events here in the Treasure Valley. I'm going to be there along with you. And you said all the candidates are going to be there?
A bunch of them are.
So
we have a number of them going to be that are on the host committee. Russ Fulcher and Braille Labrador, Tommy Seaton, Steve Yates, and Bob Nonini, candidate for Lieutenant Governor from North Idaho, is on the host committee. Michael Snyder's going to be there. He's hosting a table. And I expect a few other folks to be wandering through the room. So,
well, Pro-Life will be there. It'll Tea Party Bob.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a mix of your crew and my crew there. Let's talk a little bit about the Lieutenant Governor's race. David Ripley joining us from Idaho Chooses Life. And by the way, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Now, is your number available at your website? Because it's a lot easier to remember idahochooseslife.org than a phone number so early in the morning, sir.
Well, and the number's posted on the homepage of the website. So,
all right, we're squared away there. So the Lieutenant Governor's race, why are so many gifted and qualified people running for an office that the compensation isn't equivalent to the governor or a congressman or anything else?
Well, I think it's a number of people are looking at it as an introductory race, to introduce themselves to the people of Idaho and get positioned for future political office. It is a part-time job, but I think most of the candidates running that I've visited with really have kind of a full-time agenda with respect to the time they're prepared to commit to that office.
Well, and
it's a blessing that you have so many qualified people in the race, I think.
Well, you see, this is something that I take a look at, and Mrs. Miller asked me about this the other day, and I said to her, I go, Dorothy, I think that the more talented people you have in, the stronger a political party is. And, people should be welcoming, whether you're progressive, whether you're conservative, what have you, and let the competition of ideals go toe-to-toe. Otherwise, I think you have a limited appeal. Your thoughts, David Ripley?
Well, I think there's wisdom in that. I think we're going to have some of the most competitive and important races that, recent memory, and the number of them, I think, is going to be somewhat daunting. But I'm expecting voters to get very engaged as we move forward, and I think that combat of ideas and the competition is very healthy.
You said Ron Crane's coming there. This means that he's not running for re-election, right?
No, he's coming to the end of his public service, and I would argue he's been a tremendous servant for the people of Idaho, for a lifetime. And I'm going to finish 20 years as state treasurer. And he was one of the first people we ever gave our Friend for Life award to back in 1998. So it's really an honor that he's coming, and we can honor his service and remind people of the long road that we've been marching together. And, he's one of the great ones, I think.
Indeed. So we've got that going on. And I always like to pick your mind as we get ready for the legislative season. I know it's the holidays, but as we know with the candidates and the campaigns, it's the money season. What about the state legislature? What about the life issue? And what about the possibility of a grocery tax repeal?
Well, I would, the grocery tax question is not really in my bailiwick, but as an observer, I would predict it is certainly going to be a major issue. I think the majorities in that building are proof that they're committed to trying to give some tax relief in that regard. The life issue, I think, is going to be a very important one this session. There's going to be, I think, as many as 4 different pieces of legislation brought forward, and I'm hoping that we can have a real success going into the primaries.
How will we remember Butch Otter?
Well, I think he has been a dominating figure in the state, and I've heard you talk about it on the air. I think it's fair to say that he may be leaving office, but he's probably going to continue to have some impact on the state. He intends to be involved through OtterPAC. I think the only person that I can think of that really compares to him in terms of the impact is probably Cecil Anders, just in terms of the length of service and amount of legislation that he signed into law, the shape, that he's put in the, executive branch. From my point of view, I think his greatest legacy is going to be his commitment to life, and the number of pieces of legislation that he signed into law ranks him as, I think, the most pro-life governor in history. And I'm praying that we can continue that work going forward as we elect a new governor.
Well, I mean, he's been active in the state since '72, but, do you think that he gets the credit for being such a staunch guardian of the pro-life movement, number one? And number two, he's got 3 people that are possibly, we'll throw in Mr. Belukoff as well, 4 people looking to succeed him. Are you concerned about the Idaho getting a little wishy-washy on the life issue, considering there's going to be a turnover for the first time in 12 years of a pro-life governor?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It's going to be our highest priority because we could get all the bills through the legislature that we want, but, if the governor's not there to receive it and to help provide leadership, that work is for naught. So we have to ensure that there is a pro-life governor. I expect that there's going to be a vigorous discussion about the rest of Butch's legacy through the campaign and going forward, but I don't think he gets enough credit from conservatives in particular for the work he's done on the life issue.
David Ripley, IdahoChoosesLife.org. It's going to be a great time once again Friday night, Eagle Christian Church. What time should people get there?
Well, if you want the real bargains, the silent auction starts at 5:30. We're hoping to be serving dinner by about 6:15. And Lord willing, everybody gets their job done. We'll be packing out there by 9.
Yeah, well, first of all, we're never on time. You know that.
Yeah, no, it's a little. So that's hard. It's a hard thing to get going because people are shopping and talking and whatever. But
exactly.
We're going to crack the whip this year. That's all there's to it.
Well, here's the other one. People should get there early, and I would. And look, I'm no political consultant, but I would advise the candidates to get there early too, because you can get a lot of FaceTime with these folks that you might hear on the radio, you might see in other places, and that's a good thing. So get there early, and you never know who you're going to run into before the big spaghetti and breakfast or dinner and salad.
Yeah, and the truth is, they're going to be running into some of the greatest people. I know the rank and file pro-life community comes in there faithfully and writes checks and gives time and spends time on their knees praying for preborn children. They're the salt of the earth. So I'm looking forward to seeing many of those people that I haven't actually been able to see since last dinner. So,
well,
it's going to be awesome.
We look forward to it, and we thank you for always guarding life, David Ripley.
Well, bless you, Kevin, and thanks for your support. It'll be fun to see you up there.
You get out as much as I do if that's going to be fun, sir.
You bet.
Take
you
care.
do a great job. It's a lot of fun with you there, so thank you.
Oh, love to be your partner in that event. Thank you, sir. Thank you, David Ripley.
Hey, brother.
Okay.
See you soon.
Bye-bye. Our great friend David Ripley. Look, it's a wonderful event. Idaho Chooses Life coming up this Friday. Eagle Christian Church, idahochooseslife.org for more information. Coming up, we'll talk to George, who wants to talk taxes. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
We have a representative in Congress who they say was here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas.
There we have it. The President of the United States yesterday giving some awards to some decorated World War II veterans, the code breakers, if you will. They did that movie about them, Native Americans who served so valiantly in World War II, and now people are upset about that. We'll get into that, plus your calls about the issues that matter to you. Let's go to George, formerly of Star, with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. George, you moved?
Kevin Miller. Wow, what a treat. I tried this streaming thing, and hey, it really works. It's real time. Amazing to hear David Ripley. What a powerhouse. I'm overwhelmed. Hey, you're talking about taxes?
Now, wait a minute. I have to ask you. You moved out of Star?
Well, let's not get into that because I am currently in an undisclosed location.
Sure.
The spooks are everywhere.
I understand,
meaning
sir.
The IRS, of course. So we got to be real careful. And I have no no love for them. And my passion is always trying to overcome the, well, let me say, ambivalence and difference, on and on and on of people. They just don't realize what this evil agency is doing to them. So we got to keep waking people up.
Yes, sir. What can we do for you? You want to talk taxes?
A note about the candidate forum that David's providing. I absolutely admire Russ Fulcher. Amazing. My concern, I don't know that a Club for Growth is actually a great endorsement. I kind of, over the years, have categorized them as part of the swamp because they live in the paradigm of reforming the current system and not abolishing it. And in that regard, you've got other candidates there. Michael Schneider, who's going to absolutely pop all these candidates right between the eyes because he's not in that paradigm. He's saying, look, let's get away with this let's do away with this 72,000 pages that the politicians keep saying we can reform and different tax brackets. That is the oldest thing I've heard since childhood, and it's absolutely ludicrous because it still gives the politicians the power to ruin our lives. And we got to think out of the box. We do not need that agency. Yet people think that, oh my God, how will I live? How will my heart continue to beat without the IRS? It's disheartening because people just don't. It ought to be a conversation everyone's having every night. Wow, what was done to me today? I made $100, but 50 of it was taken from me before I even got to touch $1 bill. That should be offensive to any American. This isn't partisan. It's not partisan. It ought to be the rally cry of every American when they get up in the morning. Well, what am I going to do today to defeat ambivalence and indifference and whatever else you want to call it? I don't get it.
Well, that was quite a mouthful.
I can't help it. Taxes. I don't. Hey, it wasn't too long ago. I was on the steps of the Capitol rallying about doing away with this thing, and it was just. I was with Russ Fulcher and some other marvelous people. Hey, by the way, everyone who's going to go to David Ripley's event is a great American.
Now, it's not a candidate forum, George. It's a banquet celebrating pro-life. Their candidates are invited to be there. They'll have their own tables, but it's not a forum.
Well, I know, but
Sure.
what I mean is, they will be there, and absolutely they should be there early. How could you not want to get there early and meet fabulous people that are awake and wanting to make a difference about life? Oh,
well, I look forward to spaghetti's great. I look forward to meeting Michael Snyder, and maybe Nick Henderson will be there. I know he's been, emailing me about getting on the program and others. So we'll see what happens. You going to be there?
It's gonna be a great event, and everyone always has a great time. It's so fun. Well, Kevin, you have a wonderful morning. God bless you, and keep it up.
God bless you, George. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Traffic and weather together. And let's find out what's happening in your world at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning.
And rolling along, our time is 6:37 at KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go live to New York. Fox News Radio's Tanya J. Powers on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Boy, as a young lady, a professional young lady in the workplace, do you find trouble reporting on the story concerning Harvey Weinstein and others, considering it continues to grow and grow and grow? And I'll just start with that one.
Do I find it difficult to report on these stories?
Well, I mean, is there any reflection, and I don't want to get too personal, but I mean, people, we talk about the workplace. Sometimes it's a locker room mentality. Sometimes people joke and such. And sometimes people take it too far. I'm just wondering, for me, sometimes it's almost uncomfortable because you don't know where the lines are anymore when it comes to, who's next. Al Franken, John Conyers. It would be great. I'm trying to get myself out of this, by the way. It would be great to paint with
I can tell.
a broad brush to say this is an epidemic. But I guess what I'm saying to you is, can you as a reporter, as a young lady, a professional young lady, relate to these challenges, or do you think it just happens to the powerful? And that's my attempt to get out of it.
No, I mean, no, this goes on everywhere. We hear about the powerful because they are the headline makers. These are the people whose names we know and faces we know, and they're in positions of public import somehow. They're either politicians or they're movie stars or they're, bigwigs in the show business industry, and we've heard of them. And that is the reason that most of these have gotten so much, attention, because we know them. We know who they are. There are way too many stories from women out there, just the ones that have been shared. This is not even counting all the women who haven't spoken up and haven't, posted on social media or haven't shared their story or whatever. Most of us have one. And if we only have one, that's amazing in itself, in my opinion. But that's the reason that we keep hearing about these guys, is because they're famous or they're in the public eye somehow. There are many, many more that we don't hear about that are, being accused of the same things, or there are women who say that they have done the same sort of things.
And then you think about the rise and fall of the powerful, whether it's Harvey Weinstein, whether it's Kevin Spacey. Just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it is really amazing, and I think it's very interesting to see the way that people react to it when they find out somebody that they've watched in movies and has has played either a beloved character or somebody that, everybody loves to hate or, whatever. But, you've spent time with this character and this actor and this, person as a viewer. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, okay. And it sort of shifts everything. And I think that's one of the reasons that, it was so stunning when these first started coming out and still are, the more names get added to the list.
Let me ask you a question unrelated, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
This story, and it's blowing up in sports, but I think it's gone mainstream, concerning Greg Schiano and the University of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And you're a person that values your profession. You love being a journalist. I've known your type of people. You are the true believers, and that's a compliment. So just so you know, I'm not trying to be wishy-washy here.
Thank you.
You look at the integrity of the business that has been under fire for at least the past few years. You take a look at what happened with Greg Schiano and, people rushing to judgment, saying that he knew, making allegations about Jerry Sandusky when he was an assistant at Penn State. In other words, if you're not a sports fan, Greg Schiano, former coach, was supposed to get a job at Tennessee. People got mad. They didn't like Greg Schiano. They circulated the story that he knew about what happened with Jerry Sandusky. And what I've heard and the responsible reporting that I've seen on this, and hold on, I'm getting to you because we have you on, and I don't want, sometimes people have people on and all they do is talk to them and blah, blah, blah. But I'm getting to you, Tanya. So
I know.
I'm just trying to set this up correctly.
That's okay.
So you have Tom Bradley, who was the assistant to Joe Paterno for years, allegedly said there was another assistant. He never named that other assistant that had a concern about Jerry Sandusky. Mike McCurry, the former quarterback, former assistant coach that went to Paterno, that testified, that was deposed about this, said there was another coach. Somehow Greg Schiano's name came up. You've had trustees, chancellors exonerate Greg Schiano, and yet you have people painting on the rock, and I'm sure you've been there, ma'am, on Rocky Top there. Greg Schiano covered up child rape. As a journalist, What do you make of this story?
I saw that picture of the rock, and it is gigantic. If you haven't seen the picture of the rock that they painted that on, it's pretty large, and I was kind of shocked by it at first. I hadn't really paid much attention over the weekend about them entertaining the notion of hiring him until all that kind of came up. And a friend of mine back in Tennessee, I sent him a message. I'm like, what is going on? And he said, everybody is kind of losing it over the thought of this. And, I was not that familiar with his role in it. I've written, I don't know how many Jerry Sandusky stories during my time here. And, Joe Paterno stories and things like that. At any point had Greg Schiano, his name, been front and center of any of this, which is why I was like, wait, what is going on here? Because, it was puzzling to me as to why this was this had happened. And the only thing that I can say, because I'm not as familiar with that particular story, is the fact that, if the fans were this upset, and they were, at the thought that they might hire this guy, if you're already losing your fan support and you haven't even hired the guy, it probably was a good move for them to go, okay, well, wait a minute, maybe we should rethink this, instead of fighting the PR battle of no, really, hold on a second, you've got it all wrong. You see what I mean? As a journalist, the first thing I would have to do is start reading. Okay, what do the court papers say? What was this guy named? What did he know? Did he know something? I'd want to get to the bottom of that. As fans, fans make decisions based on emotion a lot of times.
And here's where you jump in. He was never named.
Right.
Tom Bradley, the assistant that McCurry referred to in the deposition, said it wasn't Schiano. But the power of assumption, which is the bane of good journalists like yourself.
Right. There are a lot of stories that have come out I mean, I'll just narrow it down to the last 2 years. And I mean, you can point to several different examples. There are a lot of stories that have been responsibly reported by journalists and not believed by the public. I mean, that's where fake news came from. You know, I mean, you see what I'm saying? It's not just this story that, you know, has been reported in a certain way. It has been countless stories that, you know, I mean, I've had to defend some of the reporting that I've done simply because people would not believe what we found and what we, you know, reported. It boils down to, you know, you can report the truth all day long, and if people have got it in their heads, well, that's just wrong, you know, then they're not. It doesn't matter what font you put it in on whatever website or newspaper.
Right.
You know, they're not going to believe you.
Well, it just is concerning that here you have this guy accused of covering up child rape, and there's no evidence to substantiate. I think they were just mad that Schiano was the pick, and they use that as reason. But it shows you the world we're living in. And on the other hand, you have an example of exemplary journalism. You have Ronan Farrow, who talked to CBS this week, the CBS Sunday Morning Show, and talked about how he was threatened and everything. But he held fast. Yeah,
I mean, you know, it's one thing to get nasty comments on Facebook and Twitter, which, you know, I think we've all gotten. I know, you know, I have not nearly to the extent that some people have. I mean, some people have gotten way worse than me, but you know, he definitely. I mean, when you get down to being investigated and have, you know, people posing as other folks, and that whole story about how he reported the Harvey Weinstein stuff and the links they went to kill that story or to hide it is just it's like a movie plot. It really is.
And here's the funny thing: that kid's a Rhodes Scholar and a lawyer. Amazing.
Yeah, it's some fantastic reporting. I'll tell you that. And like I said, you know, if it hadn't been for that, you know, that's the thing that kind of, you know, opened the floodgates there, and you know, it has allowed for a conversation in our country right now about something that has just, you know, nobody was willing to talk about.
And finally, I know I've held you over, and I apologize for that at KIDO Talk Radio. Any free shot on me for what happened over the weekend?
I'm taking the high road, man. The view up here is great.
That would be one of us that takes the high road. So.
I smell that fresh air on the high road. I'm feeling good today.
Well, that makes one of us.
I didn't say a word.
You didn't have to. Tanya J. Powers, we appreciate you. By the way, it was great hearing you and John Decker on Thanksgiving Day. It was a great report. So.
Oh, thank you.
With your specials, remember.
I appreciate it. Yes, we had a good time doing that interview, actually.
Very good chemistry there. So.
Thanks.
Tanya J. Powers, thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
All right, our great friend Tanya J. Powers joining us. KIDO Talk Radio time is 6:48. And we continue on. Russ Fulcher will join us next hour, talking about the first congressional race. In addition to that, we'll take a look at the Club for Growth's endorsement. We'll take your phone calls as well. By the way, some brouhaha going on Capitol Hill, where we have Nancy Pelosi's and others defending John Conyers. Let's take a listen at KIDO Talk Radio.
Process. Just because someone is accused, and was it one accusation? Is it two? I think there has to be. John Conyers is an icon in our country.
Do you believe John Conyers is accused?
I don't know who they are. Do you? They have not really come forward.
Look, I think it's really important that the words due process have come up in this conversation. Not that it's possible in every situation, but in this situation.
You know, I love this. Due process. Was there due process for Roy Moore? Was there due process for Bill O'Reilly? Bill O'Reilly lost his job without ever getting a chance to defend himself. And, you know, as we were talking with Tanya J. Powers here, you do have the reverse effect. You have the idea of the Duke Lacrosse case. Google that if you don't know what that is. You can look at what Rolling Stone did, having to pay millions of dollars to that fraternity at the University of Virginia, making up a story of rape. And now you have John Conyers. By the way, on Capitol Hill, people were talking about this on and on and on. And John Conyers had a slush fund funded by the taxpayers.
And it's a troubling set of allegations, because it wasn't just that he behaved inappropriately in a moral sense. I mean, he was basically leveraging his office in order to pry sexual favors and affection from some of his staff. That is textbook harassment, and so that absolutely needs to be ferreted out.
By the way, John Conyers is 88 years old. This is Representative Ron DeSantis on the taxpayer-funded slush fund, the hush money fund, the hush honey fund.
We also have to look at the practice that John Conyers was alleged to have engaged in, where he used his office budget, which is a separate pot of money, to pay a settlement, a harassment settlement to one of his employees. But when he did it, they basically paid a salary. So if a taxpayer was looking at it, you wouldn't know that it was for a harassment settlement. So I think all those things need to be done. I think the American people are going to demand that we take action.
Yet you have the liberal progressive media defending John Conyers, saying due process.
Every situation that we have covered over the past 2 months is different, except for maybe one or two. They all have different dynamics to them. They all have different levels of nasty to them or bad to them. And they
like your colleague Mark Halperin. He didn't get due process either. He got fired. Did Charlie Rose get due process? No, old Charlie got the boot. You know, I love this idea of due process, and people say, well, that's in the criminal court of law. Let's just destroy people. Coming up next, Senator Al Franken continues to speak and says he's just a serial hugger. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. First, traffic and weather.
This has been a shock, and it's been extremely humbling. I am embarrassed. I feel ashamed.
There we have it. Senator Al Franken speaking openly to the public with a news conference yesterday describing his bad behavior. Al, what are you going to do next?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to start my job. I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to work as hard as I can for the people of Minnesota, and I'm going to start that right now.
Boy, all the people that were Franken fanatics have to be let down. Of course, there's no due process with Senator Franken. He admits that he did wrong. Tom in Nampa with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. How y'all doing today?
We are living the dream here at KIDO Talk Radio. And you?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. I would like to know, as a taxpayer, how much of my money was spent covering Conyers' picadillos, and can we sue him to get that back? Because I don't think that's what tax money was supposed to be used for. And two, is there any way we can determine who thought setting up this fund was a good idea? My mind immediately goes to Ted Kennedy, but that's the cynicism.
Or the fact that we didn't even know about this. $15.2 million over the years has been...
Yeah, I'm kind of annoyed at that. Who thought this up? What kind of mindset thinks up setting this up? That's not someone we should have as a lawmaker of the Republic, okay? That person really, I'm like, guys, you're not someone I want in a position of power any place. Really, this is just... Harvey Weinstein? Is that even Weinstein? Weinstein. When he set up the Weinstein Company, I don't know what the exact relationship is, but he was an employee of the company. And in his employment contract, it says the first time he gets sued for sexual harassment, that would be detrimental to the company's earnings. And normally something like that, you would fire the person to protect the company. He's got a clause in his contract. The first time he gets convicted, he can't be fired, but he does have to pay the company a fine. The second time, he pays a bigger fine. The third time, etc. What sort of mindset has that clause in the contract? And what sort of company hires somebody that wants that clause in the contract? They knew, if somebody puts that in the contract,
you're right about
what you're hiring.
You're right, Tom. God bless. KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller, Fox News next. Then it's Russ Fulcher. Stay tuned.